Fitzy and Whipper with Kate Ritchie podcast.
Hi, I'm Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet.
Europe was at war, and I felt useless. Send me to Europe.
I just want to do my part. I'm with Vogue magazine.
We don't send women to combat.
Well, that's a problem, because I'm here. Ready to go?
This is very, very exciting. This is an amazing story of Elizabeth Lee Miller. She was an American photographer and photojournalist. And during World War II, she was a war correspondent for Vogue magazine, covering some horrific events. And the lady that portrays her in the latest movie, Lee, which is out tomorrow, is the magnificent Kate Winslet. And she joins us now. Kate.
Welcome to the show, Kate Winslet.
Oh, such a pleasure to have you here. I feel very at home. The tone of your show, I have to say, I can already tell, it's a lot like Chris Evans, a brilliant radio
He is good,
journalist.
isn't he?
He's fantastic, Chris. Yeah, you guys are a lot like Chris, I think.
I'm not sure that we've ever spoken. We certainly haven't had you here in the studio, and this show's been on for 14 years. You decide to come here, and then the royal family trump you and turn up at the same time. Have you rung the king and said, come on, mate, this is my time?
Do you know, I met King Charles years ago. He came to a royal premiere of Sense and Sensibility when I was only 20.
Wow.
And I do somewhere have a photograph of me shaking his hand. And actually I was a little bit concerned because I remember I was wearing a really lovely velvet coat, but underneath the velvet coat I was wearing quite a lacy black, really nice sort of a jumpsuit. Yeah. But I suddenly realised as I was about to meet the king that I think it might have been a little bit see-through. And so I just shrouded myself with this velvety thing.
Were his eyes darting?
No, not remotely, because I had successfully covered myself in this velvety thing. But I did have this proper moment of sheer panic, thinking, "Oh my goodness, I'm about to curtsy in front of the king."
Can I just say though that you're here at the same time as the King and Queen, but you've beaten the Gallagher brothers because they've just called an Australian tour. So you've beaten them before. Have you met the Gallagher brothers before, Kate?
I met Liam once. I was on Graham Norton, a talk show in the UK. I was on the sofa as one of the guests.
I remember
of that
the
show
episode
with him once. Yeah. I didn't really get to actually chat to him much, but yeah.
Let's talk the film, because I mean it is a beautiful film.
Let's
and the
talk the film,
story is extraordinary, because I love the way it's told as well. And I'm not going to say everything that happens obviously in the film, but you must have been so inspired by the bravery of one person.
Yes, I absolutely was. And I must say, how you just introed the film was so terrific, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but what you said was Lee Miller was a photographer and war correspondent who documented the atrocities of the Second World War. And that is exactly who she was, and how I hope people meet Lee for the first time, the people who have never heard of her and have no idea who she was. I wanted to make this film because when I Googled Lee Miller in 2015, knowing a bit about her, what drove me crazy was that she was described as the ex-cover girl, former Vogue model, ex-lover and muse of Man Ray. Okay? So this way in which we seem to be still so hell-bent on describing significant female figures alongside their love lives drives me nuts. And I thought, this is completely wrong. So this film covers a decade in Lee's life, just before, during and immediately after the war, when she used that camera, her Rolleiflex camera that hangs around the neck and sits in front of the heart. It doesn't typically come up to the eye. By using her camera in this way, she could look down into her image. It has quite a wide lens. And once her frame was set and her focus was in place, it then enabled her to lift her eye and meet the gaze of the person or the people that she was photographing, and therefore be present.
You did it beautifully.
Yeah, she really stood amongst them and captured what was happening to those left
and I
behind.
guess was connected with them at the time of the photograph being taken as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why, her photography was so unique.
The one that I want to, and I hope that I'm not giving too much away here, but there's a very famous photo, Kate, of where she found herself in Hitler's house. And this is after he had passed, and she found herself in the bathroom, in Hitler's bathroom. She took a very famous photo of her taking a bath in Hitler's bath. Can I ask you, was that sort of a moment of triumph for her? Do you think that that was a photo that she needed to take to say that we had triumphed over Hitler?
Well, I think there are many things to say about that particular image, which is such an extraordinary image. It is, as you point out, it's probably one of the most, if not the most iconic photograph of Lee Miller, in fact, taken by her buddy, Davy Sherman, who was a photographer for Life magazine. She knew where Hitler's apartment was. She was very good at getting information that she needed. She kept her ear very close to the ground. She budded up with all the GIs, and she was the first through the door of any scoop. So on the day of the liberation of Dachau, Lee and Davy bribed their way into Hitler's Munich apartment, only to discover that there was already an entire regiment in there pretty much having a party and helping themselves to drinks and having cocktails. And yeah, there was a bathroom. Lee and Davy absolutely stank. They hadn't changed their clothes for 6 weeks. They hadn't touched hot water for 6 weeks either. Yeah. But Lee, as a woman, hadn't even been able to go into a private space and lock a door and take a moment for herself. So when they ran that tap and found that the water was hot, yeah, she got in that bath and she had a damn fine soak. And then I think in the moment, she thought to herself, hang on a minute, this is a scoop. But what is significant about that image, most significant of all, is the mud from her boots. She stamped it into the lemon yellow bath mat belonging to Hitler, treading the dirt of his crimes. The dust of Dachau, where she had been that morning, she left that mark behind. And that, to me, is an extraordinary thing.
This is the Fitzy and Whipper with Kate Ritchie podcast.
I have to say, too, I also just want to thank you for the conversations that you have and that you continue to have about body image. And I guess we've had very different careers, but what we do have in common is that we somewhat grew up in the public eye. I grew up on a television show. And I have to say, what I see of you out and about in all of these videos and podcasts and talking about as women and as young girls growing up and having people comment about us and pass judgment and feel as though it's okay to say certain things. I think that intrinsically we've always known that it's not okay, but it's been, it's a really hard conversation to have, and it's hard to sometimes stand up and say, this does not make me feel good, and it's not okay for you to speak that way. And someone of your calibre, to hear you, I hope you know the value of you having these conversations, because it makes me, and I'm sure millions of other women see what's happening to me.
Oh, she's unravelling in here.
But the fact that we can hear you say those things, it really has opened the door for all of us. So that is my heartfelt thank you.
Well, that's really very kind. And what I will say is that I think women are getting better at standing up for each other as well as standing up for ourselves. And that's where Lee Miller, honestly, added to how I feel about these important things of not body shaming and women using their voices in ways that are grounded, graceful, and integral to who they are. We don't need to shout about it. Lee Miller, what's interesting, she could have been full of malice and vengeance. She suffered a terrible trauma as a child, and she refused to let that thing define her. But what it did do was it gave her this very powerful streak of injustice. Lee Miller, 80 years ago, was already redefining femininity to mean resilience and power and compassion and strength. And those are the values by which I live my life. I know that my sisters do, my friends do. It is how we're raising our daughters today. And hopefully we are paving a way for them to stand shoulder to shoulder and look out for one another. And I think compassion, especially now, is the most important thing that we can show to one another and to the greater world.
Kate Winslet, the thank you I'd like to do is we started an initiative here, a social initiative called 36 Months. And you have been so fantastic in pointing out to the world the dangers of social media. So 36 months is the idea of changing the law here in Australia from 13 to 16.
Oh, wow.
And we've made fantastic progress.
Oh, great.
We've got a petition with 121,000 signatures. The Prime Minister has committed to making a change in November, which is terrific.
Yeah.
But we're pushing it to 16. That's where we need it to be for the safety of our kids. You've spoken so beautifully on this topic. A message for the Prime Minister about how important this is?
Well, I I slightly shy away from giving messages to important political figures, but what I would certainly say is that the fact that there is a conversation about it that is gaining momentum in this country is incredibly important, because what that's doing, it's making families feel seen and heard. And if parents feel that they can bump into each other at the school gates and have an exchange about what they're going through and feel known, that I think matters more than anything else. For families, that's really important.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Definitely.
There's kids on the edge that need saving.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree.
Thank you.
Kate, we know how busy you are. Your portrayal of Lee Miller is unbelievable. The movie is out in cinemas tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time and making your way into the studio here. It's been a highlight of our year. Thank you very much, Kate.
Thank you for having me.
Fits in Whipper with Kate Ritchie is a Nova podcast. For more great shows like this, download the Nova Player via the App Store or Google Play.
The Nova Player.